This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is the ultimate doubleheader for Philadelphia fans. Sixers at 6:30, Flyers right after that tonight on 97.3 ESPN. And I'm only here for a half hour because the Sixers are not just at 6:30, but they're dressing the entire team. They're bringing everybody to play the Raptors, and I have no idea why. Why are we starting the entire team against the Raptors in a meaningless game? What are you going to get, like some scouting report? Listen, I've always said, listen, you want to start Tobias Harris and Al Horford. But Embiid started with no minute restriction tonight. Why? Wasn't he injured? Is he just suddenly not injured anymore? What's going on here? Well, we can find out in about 30 minutes right here on 97.3 ESPN, and we'll do it together. Now, the Flyers game is tentatively scheduled to come on around 8-something. I say 8-something because the Islanders-Capitals game is tied 2-2, and the Islanders-Capitals game started a little bit later than previously planned because the game before them, which was Bruins and Hurricanes. I have no idea why I almost forgot that team for a moment, but the Bruins and the Hurricanes, they went to overtime, the game that was supposed to play last night because Tampa and Columbus, the game that Broads and I were talking about yesterday here on 97.3 ESPN, went to not one, not two, not three, but four. They went 5-6 overtimes, and the poor Columbus Blue Jacket fans are crying in their milk this morning. So the Bruins Hurricanes game got pushed off to today. And now we got the Islanders and the Capitals tied 2-2 with 7 minutes left in the third period. And the Caps had a chance to score, and they messed up there. So as soon as the Sixers game is done tonight, we will go to Flyers hockey. I promise you that. You will hear the Sixers and the Flyers tonight. You just got to keep it tuned here at 97.3 ESPN. Also follow Kevin Durso on Twitter at Kevin_Durso. Follow at 97.3 ESPN on Twitter for all your updates as well. Coming up in this abbreviated edition of Game Night, we got Dave Weinberg, longtime Eagles reporter, also longtime guy who's covered the South Jersey high school sports scene. A lot of morphing changes in the area when it comes to what is going on with the high school sports scene. Eagles, Doug Pederson back in the building. We'll get into all that more coming up with Dave Weinberg in about 11, 12 minutes from now. But we got to start with the Sixers and the Flyers because to me it is absolutely incredible the different path these two squads are going in. It is absolutely incredible to me how different the Sixers and the Flyers have been constructed, how they've been set up, how they've been organized, and where they are at as of August 12th, 2020. First of all, it's still weird to say it's August 12th, 2020, and we have the Sixers and the Flyers in the playoffs. It's ridiculous. By the way, the Capitals had another shot at scoring a goal, and they messed that up again. Come on. I don't care who wins the game. I just want somebody to win the game. I mean, going 5-6 overtimes is ridiculous. I understand a guy like Broads loves hockey, but after a while, you're just like, come on, somebody score. But back to the Flyers and the Sixers. You look at the way those two teams have been constructed, how they've been set up, and you realize that you're talking about two franchises that are in just completely different places right now with a completely different set of expectations. The Philadelphia 76ers came into this year with incredible expectations. This team was supposed to be one of the contenders in the Eastern Conference. This is a team that is supposed to be one of the top contenders, one of the best in the Eastern Conference. And they turn around and they had this super hot start to the season, and then they go and give us a roller coaster the rest of the year. What am I supposed to do with that? Then they go out and make another trade. They bring in Alec Burks. They bring in Glenn Robinson III to get some more outside shooting, some wing guys for the team, all right? Then we had the pandemic shutdown. Then we see and hear about how great Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid look. Now, tonight, going into this game versus the Raptors, Simmons is out for the year. Joel Embiid is coming off of an ankle sprain, I guess. Not even fully sure because, the Sixers are never fully giving us all the details, but he's back in the lineup tonight. We'll see what kind of effort we get from him. And then, on the flip side, you realize that the Sixers, without Ben Simmons, aren't going to make a deep playoff run. We just heard Keith Smith here on the Sports Bash an hour ago. On the Sports Bash every Wednesday, he joins the guys, Yahoo Sports NBA writer, and he said that without Ben Simmons, he has trouble believing the Sixers can get out of the first round. So now you're going to have another offseason of major changes because Brett Brown is either gone or not gone. We'll find out what happens with that. They obviously have to make changes to the roster in some way in order to not repeat this year's situation when it came to the inconsistent play. So you have one team that came into the year with these incredible expectations, and frankly, they're a bit disappointing. The flip side, the Flyers, you weren't really fully sure what to think of them coming into the year. You were hoping they'd be better than last year with the new head coach and another year for Carter Hart, and you thought that the youth mixed with the veterans could be a competitive team. And they start out the year, and you got to get some hope, but then they have some up and down moments. And then they just start getting hotter and more interesting and more viable. And you're like, okay, they look interesting. They're competitive. That 1-0 loss to Tampa got a lot of us sitting there saying this is a competitive hockey team. And then they had this super just en fuego hot streak before the pandemic shut hockey down. And then they come out of the pandemic and they're arguably one of the best teams in the NHL. Scott Laughlin said just 2 days ago, right here on Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN, he said that the Flyers have the least flaws of any team in the Eastern Conference. So again, think about the contrast. You have one team that had incredible expectations, and now we don't know how they're going to get out of the first round per se for the Sixers, and another team without the same expectations, who are now the team that's expected to have the best chance to win a championship in the city. It's an incredible opposite ends of the spectrum with these two teams. And it's going to be fun to watch and see, does the train wreck get more interesting? Does it get more crazy when it comes to the Sixers? What else could happen? I'm still shocked that Joel Embiid doesn't have any minute restriction or any other information like that tonight. But guess what? Embiid, Harris, and Horford, they're back on the court versus the Raptors. Coming up here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm curious to see, what does Embiid give you? How much does he play? Does he have anything new to offer a Raptors defense that stifled him in last year's playoffs? The Raptors are a team that plays incredible team defense. I think Nick Nurse is the coach of the year, by the way. So how does his new version of Tobias Harris, stand up against that team? By the way, for inquiring minds, the Islanders just scored 3-2. So when you think about it, you have a Sixers team that's going against a Raptors team that this could be a measuring stick game. So it does have some value. It does have some validity. But at the same time, it feels like you sat almost everybody yesterday just to play today, what it seems like you're doing here with these back-to-backs. And by the way, looking ahead to their final game against the Rockets this Friday night, 9 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN, that game's going to be interesting because Russell Westbrook is expected not to play. He's having an MRI on his right quad right now. So you're going to go into a Rockets team that's going to be a little shorthanded, and you're a little shorthanded with Ben Simmons. That's going to be an interesting situation. So these next two games for the Sixers are going to be very interesting to see what happens. Because I don't know what version of Embiid I'm getting. I don't know what version of this lineup I'm getting, especially after how hard some of the backups played yesterday. Some of those guys were just hustling their butt off. I mean, guys like Alec Burks and Howell Netter were out there busting their tail, working their tail off to try to do as best they can. And then as we're going along here, we get this news. So for tonight's game, Glenn Robinson III is out again with the hip pointer. All right. So one of the guys who had a legitimate role in play yesterday, he's sore apparently. He had to get some extra treatment. He's being reevaluated tomorrow. So I guess we're going back to what the team looked like 2 or 3 games ago without Glenn Robinson III. So that's a little disappointing. Again, Sixers coming up, 6:30 right here on 97.3 ESPN, followed by Flyers hockey, first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Coming up in just a few minutes, Dave Weinberg, longtime Eagles beat writer, also has covered high school sports in South Jersey for a long time. He's going to join us, talk all about that kind of stuff coming up in just a moment. And may I remind you with this Flyers game tonight, I'm going to give you a really quick key to the game tonight. Sean Couturier, one of the best defensive forward centers in the entire league. I want to see how he does against the feisty Canadian forwards. Thomas Tatar, Max Domi, Brendan Gallagher. How does he handle those guys? When are there going to be situations where he might have to not just go mano-a-mano going through the zones, but is he able to shield them off? The Flyers have played incredible defense since the restart in the round robin. Can they continue that defense against a Montreal team that likes to get under your skin a little bit? They're no quit. They're always hanging around. See how the Flyers handle that? Of course, you can hear it right here on 97.3 ESPN. The PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open for you at 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig, game night, leading you up to Sixers basketball at 6:30 right here on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up next, a Weinberg Wednesday.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Leading up to Sixers basketball tonight here on 97.3 ESPN. I am Josh Hennig hanging out with you. Game night, and every Wednesday, we were doing this previously in the warm-up from 1 to 2. Now we're doing it from 6 to 7. Dave Weinberg, veteran Eagles writer, covered Eagles for a long time, also covered high school sports in South Jersey for a long time. Those were the topics of his 2 latest extra point columns over there at 973ESPN.com. And of course, you can follow Dave on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. As all guests, he joins us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Dave, how you doing this Wednesday?
Doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, one of the big stories right now with the Eagles is Doug Pederson is back in the building. And I thought it was interesting, Dave, because you've covered the Eagles through a lot of different iterations and seen a lot of different versions. And I thought it was interesting when he told the media today that he said, we're basically ready to play. We've already installed everything, and that since tomorrow was their original scheduled preseason game already, that if they had to go out and play tomorrow, they would be ready. Does that surprise you at all?
A little bit, yeah, only because they haven't had any OTAs or mini camps. So, but I guess they did a pretty good job of doing everything virtually, giving the players the playbooks and enough time to get comfortable with them and learn them. I don't know about being ready to play, though. I mean, it's one thing to know the offense, but to be able to actually execute it without hardly any practice time, I think that would have been a pretty difficult challenge for them. But it's encouraging, though, that they seem like relatively on schedule, especially considering everything that's happened.
Now, we know Doug Pederson now is the 3rd NFL head coach to test positive for COVID-19. We know that Sean Payton tested during the offseason. Doug obviously tested recently. And we also found out the little bomb that was dropped during Hard Knocks last night. So Anthony Lynn also tested positive. So, and the feeling is, I thought was interesting, is Doug and Anthony Lynn had a little bit similar reactions to the situation, which is this next man up mentality. And, it's a little weird to hear that considering, the the way the world is right now with COVID-19 that you have football coaches who kind of have this attitude of, well, COVID-19, next man up, let's go?
Well, I think it's worth noting that both guys were asymptomatic, and that kind of alleviates a lot of the stress, I guess, and the worry about this. The fact that Doug had no symptoms probably lends him to be a little more, I guess, confident and comfortable about his situation. It would probably be a little bit different story if they were, God forbid, if they were more seriously affected by it. But it's good that they were both. Doug especially was asymptomatic, was able to come back in 10 days, and hit the ground running again. It was nice to see that hear from him that he stayed heavily involved with the team during the whole thing, so he really didn't miss much.
When you think about the Eagles right now, we know that the Eagles are in a very enviable position because they don't have a ton of changes that a lot of other teams do with their coaching staff. And I have to think that has a lot to do with the fact that, Doug and Howie and this organization has put a lot of stability in there. And it seems like that might be a big reason why, when you look at certain teams around the league, they may have maybe some real trials to go through this NFL season where the Eagles might be able to weather, especially considering the fact of the injuries they've had over the last few years.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, that the stability and the chemistry that they have on the team is a huge asset to them, especially when you consider the NFC East. Every other team that has a new head coach and a new system in place. The players weren't able to get out onto the field to learn it, and this goes for both veterans and rookies. So the fact that the Eagles are here, know what to expect. That's why I guess it was a little bit easier for them to install their offensive defense, because most of the guys already know it anyway. It was more of a situation of maybe getting the rookies and the newcomers more comfortable with it. But, that's going to enable them to hit the ground running, so to speak. And I would think that's going to give them a huge advantage, especially earlier in the season.
Dave Weinberg joining us here on the Boardwalk on the hotline here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Again, you check out his extra point columns right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. Also, you can check him out on Twitter at Dave Weinberg 19. Dave, the other topic of one of your extra points this week was about something that's very near and dear to a lot of people here in South Jersey, high school football, and with a lot of cancellations going on, not just in our area with different things, but nationally. We saw the Big Ten and the Pac-12 pull the plug on football altogether. Do you think after Governor Murphy came out with the statement they did today saying that, we want to see kids get back to schools, how does that affect the situation with high school sports this fall?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting how this is going to work out. I mean, I really hope that I'm wrong. I hope that, they do find a way to play, because, everyone knows about the positive, the benefits of high school sports on young kids, student athletes, just their overall well-being, both mentally and physically. And, it's proven that, they generally get better grades. They're more confident and comfortable with themselves. And to take that away would be really tough. But honestly, Josh, I'm not really sure how it's going to work. With all the growing number of cases, and I know that the statistics suggest that young people aren't really affected by this, but all it would take would be for one tragedy to ruin it for everyone. And, God forbid that would happen in our area. And I'm really hoping that it doesn't. I just don't see how it's feasible to, especially with football. I mean, I can see cross country or girls tennis. You're relatively socially distanced anyway. Football is the ultimate contact sport. Every play you're in contact with everyone, with someone, pretty much. I just don't know how it's safe enough to continue with the season, but maybe they figured out a way to make it happen, and I hope they can, but I really have my doubts.
With that being said, if they were to find a way to make it happen, obviously I'm painting a glass half full question here, but for just the purpose of conversation, if they were able to make it happen, what kind of year could we have? Because they previously proposed the idea that they wouldn't even start at the original time anyway. So what kind of high school season will we even be looking at?
An abbreviated one. High school football won't start until October 2nd, and but I believe teams will be guaranteed 6 regular season games, 2 weeks for playoffs, and then that's it. Although if you don't make the playoffs, or you opt out of them, I guess you're free to keep playing in terms of preserving the Thanksgiving rivalry games, which are so important to our area, especially. Those will still continue, but otherwise, your season's over after like 8 weeks or 7 or 8 weeks, I guess. And that's a big. There's no state championship games either, so that knocks off a chunk of the postseason. So yeah, they're trying to do their best to. I got to give Derek Sellers, the president of the West Jersey Football League, a lot of credit for realigning the divisions and then doing all that he could to make sure that there can be football in some form in the area. But it's going to be a much shorter season than usual. I mean, teams are usually playing 11, 12 games. Now they'll be playing like 6 or 8.
Dave, one more before I let you go. Obviously, we have Sixers basketball coming up at the bottom of the hour here on 97.3 ESPN. I wanted to ask you not directly about the Sixers and the Flyers, but has what you observed from the Sixers, Flyers, and Phillies returning, has that given you any other hope for sports in general, or do you feel like each case is a very unique situation?
Well, with the Sixers and Flyers being in the so-called bubble situations, that would work. That's been a huge benefit to those sports. I don't know how it's going to work with football in particular. I mean, I think it's far-fetched to even suggest that could happen. Baseball, I've been a little bit more encouraged because of there have been some outbreaks, but they've been like few and far between. I mean, restricted to basically the Cardinals and the Marlins. So I think baseball's doing a pretty good job of policing themselves and adhering to the protocols that they've established. So I guess from that standpoint, maybe there is some hope. I mean, the Eagles really haven't had too many problems yet, although their off season is early. Really, they haven't been at the NovaCare complex more than like a few weeks now. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds as they go forward in training camp. Absolutely.
Dave Weinberg, follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Of course, you can catch him every Wednesday here on Game Night for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. As all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. Again, check out his Extra Point articles right now at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, appreciate the time. We'll catch you next week.
Sounds good, Josh. Thanks again.
Dave Weinberg, always great insights, and it's one of those things where, someone like him who's seen a lot of the things that go into making high school sports happen and what goes on behind the scenes with the Eagles, always great, to pick his mind about these things. And, as we look ahead to the sports season when it comes to not just the NFL, but also the high school sports season, I think that the one thing that I know a lot of people are hanging on to, and I think it's an important thing to hang on to, is, when we were back in March and April, there were a lot of people who were completely unsure if we would have the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball return. Even in May and June, there were a lot of questions about how they were going to do this. Could they do this? Could they pull this off? And I think that if you're someone who wants to be positive, you're someone who's looking ahead and saying, is there hope for high school sports this year? Is there hope for the NFL? I think your hope is in the fact that months ago we weren't sure if we were going to be where we are right now. And the fact that the world is evolving in its perspective of COVID-19, the fact that we're even closer than we were before to treatments, vaccines, the fact that it seems like people are taking the protocols more seriously than before. I think there's a lot of variables that do give you hope for the NFL season, and there is a outside possibility for high school football because you look at the Big 12 and the SEC and other conferences, they're going to try to make it work. So I'm not saying you should hang on to it tightly, but listen, the fact that we don't know what the world's going to be like next month or the month after, I think those are things that can give you a little bit of hope moving forward.